leaders in one of the organizations that we work with, he was in charge of actually fleet maintenance. So he's in charge of making sure all the vehicles and equipment are operating in good condition. And during that time, he had a bunch of people in his work group. Some guys were really great at doing tune-ups and engine work. Some guys were good at doing brakes. One guy was really good at hydraulics because they had hydraulic equipment. So some of you may relate to this on a maintenance level, or you just might find that certain people are good at certain tasks. So he had harmony in his work group. Everyone was happy. And what he decided to do is he recognized that because he had lots of high seniority, long-term employees in those various roles, that it was really hurting his flexibility. So when people were on taking their vacation time, he found himself getting stuck with not being able to do certain work because that person wasn't there. So he decided to shake it up a little bit. He started to go to each person and say, okay, you're really good at working on engine stuff. I want you to go and learn how to do hydraulics. And the hydraulics guy, I want you to learn how to do brakes. And the brakes guy, I want you to learn how to do engines. Boy, did people howl. I mean, he had great, happy employees. He went in, he started to disturb it a little bit to get people to master different parts of their job. What was interesting is the guy who is the best at doing something felt the most threatened when he was asked to do something different. So what this leader found is, and by the way, other managers were coming up to this particular leader and saying, what are you thinking? You had a good thing going here. Why would you go in and disrupt everything? So he wasn't even getting support from his fellow peers and managers. They were saying, you know, you got to be crazy to be thinking about doing this. What ended up happening is he recognized that the defensiveness that they were exhibiting was just because he was asking them to step out of their comfort zone. This is another aspect of leadership, right? It's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. See, if you wait to be patted on the back and said how great a leader you are and so forth, you're going to be waiting a long time in my experience, even if you do good things. Every once in a while someone will tell you about it. Most of the time though, they don't tell you anything. Not until your retirement party or your eulogy, and that's when the good stuff comes out. So the problem is most of us aren't going to hear a lot of that. So what this manager did is he stuck with it as he changed up the responsibilities. And pretty soon, the guy who used to be good at engines started to become pretty good at hydraulics. And the guy who's good at hydraulics became good at brakes. And so before long, they actually mastered a new set of skills. And he was seen as a contributing factor to creating that motivation and interest because he decided that for his department to run well, he had to get people feeling comfortable and confident in different areas. Eventually, after about 4 weeks of being unsettled, they started to settle into this new normal. That's the thing you should understand about making change happen in your work groups, is when you disturb the status quo, there's always going to be some disruption and discomfort for you and for them. And yet if you go through that long enough, if you're willing to stick with it long enough, what you start to see is that people will settle into a new normal. It just takes a bit of time and you have to sort of push through the smoke to get there.
What if you have just a refusal?
A refusal to do it. So that's interesting. So the question is, you know, what do we do when an employee refuses to do a different work task that we've asked them to do? The first question, you're fired, somebody said. Or use the Donald Trump approach, you're fired, right? So the reality is that I would say that first of all, when someone refuses, check your own reaction first. Because obviously the first thing we think is, who are you to refuse the thing that I've asked you to do? We kind of get into this little bit, I told you to do it, that's why. And instead, just the first reaction is to stay calm in that situation and to think to yourself, that's an interesting reaction. Why would the person refuse the work? And then it's to probably go and have a meeting with them or a discussion with them away from the work group so that there's no peer pressure or no peer observation going on, and say, tell me why you're refusing to do that work. I need to know why. You have to find out, is it a legitimate reason that would justify them not doing the work? Or is it just that they have a negative attitude towards what you're asking them to do? And because behind every overt, aggressive reaction like that is usually insecurity. The person's insecure about what you're asking them to do. They're afraid to fail, they're afraid to look foolish, they're afraid to be uncomfortable, and so they won't be able to properly express that until you get them in private. And then what you do is you ask questions. Why do you not want to do that work? What's wrong with doing that work? And you're trying to separate out the legitimate reasons why people are saying they don't want to do it from the underlying defensive reasons. Because once I find out that the person actually has some fear about doing what I've asked them to do, or they just don't think they're going to like it, then what I can do is to say, look, I need you to give it a try. I need you to go with it a little bit. so that we can both see that you can be successful at it. And by the way, I believe that you could be successful doing it. I need you to do it. The work group needs you to do it. The customers need you to do it. The clients need you to do it. We need you to do that work. It's an important part of getting the work done. If it's one of those tasks that nobody likes doing just because it's dirty or hard or difficult, say that we each have to take turns doing some of the tasks that we don't like, because that's what it takes for us to be successful. So again, just make sure that when someone gets overly aggressive with you or assertive or difficult, realize that that's a defense mechanism that the person's using. They're feeling defensive. That's what's causing it. Once you realize that, then you don't allow that to affect you as much, because you realize, that person's getting bent out of shape on this for maybe no good reason. So if delegation, I want you to view your work group with a different sort of viewpoint. We're going to be discussing it later in the program. I want you to look at the people in your work crew and decide who is ready to take on a different task, a different level of responsibility. Who could I ask to think more about what they're doing? And then you'll realize that you can start to grow the people around you without feeling threatened. You see, again, you don't have to, as a leader, you have to get over your own insecurities about building up people so that you can be replaced. A good leader is someone who builds up the capabilities of people so that those people are willing to step up in those leadership roles in the future. And then you realize that that's part of being a leader. Then you don't get insecure about the fact that you're getting your people to be good at stuff that you're good at. You don't feel threatened by that, because that really makes you able to step up to a higher level of leadership if you're interested in it.